Okay, so this is the final video for the Jagdpanther tank destroyer, and we're going to cover a few things here. First is, once you have the underside of the superstructure, or not superstructure, but the hull and all the suspension painted, and the track painted, you can go ahead and install it. And it's a little bit tricky, so I want to cover that first. Now, you might want to test fit it, but you also risk removing a lot of paint when you do so. So the best thing to do is to be sure that you've got it the right size, and then just go ahead and install it. And I've got a bit of 4:1. Straight glue is good for this too. You just want to put it everywhere that you feel the track might touch. So all along the top of these wheels here. And along the bottom here as well. And I've avoided weathering this part because the glue is a little bit shiny when it dries. So it's good to be able to put a little bit of weathering or whatever in afterwards. So I've kind of left that for later. Now this can really be a challenge to get in there. So try to be careful. I really suggest setting the rear in first, because that's going to be your biggest challenge area. So yeah, you really have to jam that rear part in before you're even going to be able to work on this front part at all. So get that in, and then once you've got it set, which may take a little while, then you want to make sure that there's not a whole lot of sometimes the track will sit unevenly horizontally, and you really want to make sure that doesn't happen because it will look odd later. And then you want to take some round toothpicks, or even something bigger like these mini clothespins, and sort of wedge them. The nice thing about the clothespins is you kind of wrench them apart, and they sort of expand to whatever size you need them to be, as long as it's larger than a certain size. You kind of want to make it look like the track's got some weight, so it's kind of laying down upon the top of the wheels. Toward the back, it's not going to be so important because this part is covered. And that installs your track. Now I'm going to give this a little bit to dry and sort of cover the creation of this piece here, which is the optional side skirt. Then I'll sort of show you how to install it, but I probably actually won't finally install it because this probably won't be dry enough by then. So you're going to want some cue card paper, and likely you haven't even cut this part out yet, so be prepared to cut all these little squares out. You're also going to need I don't know, 3 or 4 millimeter wide, 63 millimeter long strip of cardboard cereal box, just to use as a kind of backing. Now, a lot of the time when these things are in the field, some of these squares got knocked out, and if you want to sort of have some of them but not all of them, you're going to have to shorten this thing or have 2 sections of it, depending on which ones you don't want knocked out. I'm sure you can figure that out as you go. But you are going to need a very thin strip of cue card paper if you're attaching the side skirts. You're also going to want, again, to have painted both the superstructure and the track, and probably to have done your weathering inside there, since it's going to be really hard to get a brush in there afterwards, after the skirt is attached, which is one of the reasons why I'm not actually going to attach it. But I do recommend leaving the main body of the tank non-painted, or at least these symbols here. And you can kind of work back, as long as you're installing all the parts, from this corner, if you have already painted. It's not that big a deal. You can just like work back, and knowing that's the corner of one, you can kind of see where they need to be installed. You can kind of see how they line up like that. And I really like, the reason that I've made them separate parts rather than one long chunk is because you do kind of need these little gaps between. It makes them look a lot more realistic. So once you've got your little pieces cut out, there are some that have pieces right on the corner tips, and there's some that have them a little bit set inside. Those set inside symbols go on each end with the, yeah, kind of like this. So line them up sort of thing and plan to put them on. You really want to be careful when you're installing them that you get them on there straight. And don't install them super, like you don't want them too close to the top. Like you do need a little bit of a gap. So basically install them right around the center of it and leave about 2 to 3 millimeters of indent, or else you're not going to have enough room on the end for the last piece. Try to make sure that they line up so that you're not like going to offshoot and be down here by the time you get over to here. And then just install each piece along the edge. Try to make sure they match nicely. But if there's a little bit of wonkiness to it, it's actually not that bad because these generally took a beating if they went over any kind of heavy terrain. And quite often they would get knocked off, as I mentioned before. So having them a little bit wonky, even if you want to have them all installed, unless you're like right in the showroom, that's kind of what you want. And you're going to have to be prepared for this piece to warp a little bit. Now you can alternately use like a coffee stir stick or a piece of wood, like the flat toothpicks. You can use that as a backing. The flat toothpicks aren't generally long enough. You will have to use 2 of them. And that will reduce the warping that you get when you're installing the pieces and when you're painting it. But I mean, you can always just bend it back, so it's not a big deal. So generally I just use the paper option. Kind of try to make sure they're straight on the tabletop. And then leave that to dry. And you're going to want to paint the back side because obviously you're not going to be able to get your brush back in there at all. Paint and weather it before installing. Now, I'm not actually going to install this because I would, that's not dry enough and I do need to do the weathering before I put it on. So just cut some, like this thin strip of cue card paper you have. Cut some maybe 3 millimeter length bits. 2.5 to 3. Try to keep them a standard length. And cut some extras so that if they aren't the same, you have some to choose from. It's actually easier to get them a standard length by using scraper blade rather than trying to do it with scissors. Scissors kind of give you an optical illusion sometimes as to where you're cutting. And you basically want to install these along the top here first. Actually, that's not that great of an idea because depending on the spacing, you may end up installing them in the wrong space. So I'm actually going to change that. Install them along here first. That way, no matter what happens, they'll be in the right place. A little bit extra glue on my brush there. chunky. Get that set up here. So leave a little bit more than half overlapping because the width of the cardboard will have to be included in the length that you need to cover before you actually hit where you're stabilizing against. So pretty much, if you've cut these at 3 millimeters, you only want to really install them as far as the blue symbol comes in. Once you have all these pieces and your suspension or your track is dry and set in place and everything's weathered to your satisfaction, what you want to do is kind of bend these over before actually trying to install the side skirt, and then just kind of put some glue on each of them, set it in place, and you should be able to make that match. Now you can put a bead of glue along the edge of this little the track cover. That's a pretty good plan as well, just to provide a little bit of extra bonding area. Like these little attachments are more for show than actually getting a bond. So I would definitely recommend you put that bead of glue along the edge of the track cover when installing these. So get that like this, let it dry, and then, like I said, install it. And that, except for the headlight, gets you to the end. Now the headlight is installed, if there is no symbol, it's in the middle of this track cover on the left, second red line. So do a little pilot hole. And then use a small thin bit to just get a little bit of a hole through there. Cut a small strip of cardboard, about 4 to 5 millimeters long. Glue it in there, and then once it's completely dry and painted, oh, there it is. You will want to either strip the pupil out of a Google eye, which is what I used to do, or use one of those gem stickers that we used in the suspension, but make sure it's a clear gem sticker rather than a colored one. And those make really nice headlights as well. So you can watch headlight videos from some of the other models if you need more instruction other than what I just said. But it's pretty simple. Just install this little stock and then stick the headlight onto there afterwards. So the tiniest Google eye is what I'm talking about, or these clear little gem stickers, which you can use. But I don't want to install them until it's painted, or else you get paint on there and they don't look clear anymore. And that is the end of the Jagdpanther videos. Hope you enjoyed making this model, and see you soon in another model. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.